Hi, I'm your host, Evan Graver, and welcome to the very first episode of Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. When I first started thinking about doing a podcast, the immediate idea that sprang to mind was to talk to my fellow authors. Not just about why we started writing and what our background is, but I wanted to know how they incorporate their background into their writing. What makes their writing tick? What makes their story special? What makes these authors do what they do? In that vein, I wanted the very first episode of Plot Recon to be about me, not because I'm vain, but so you guys know I'm the real deal. I'm a self-published author with 24 titles on under my belt, across 3 series and a standalone. All of them are thrillers because that's my jam. Today I have with me my fellow podcaster, Scott McClain. Scott is an Air Force veteran, a retired customs agent, and the host of the Vets Connection podcast. And he's the founder of the One Man, One Mic Foundation, which teaches veterans all about podcasting. Scott has been my mentor into this journey of podcasting, and I have to say he's been pretty exceptional at it. So today, Scott's going to put the screws to me, just like I'm putting them to my fellow authors. So without further ado, here's Scott. Fire away, bud.
What's up, my friend?
Oh, I living the dream in South Florida.
There you go. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be doing your inaugural episode. And I am not a beat around the bush guy. When I do my podcast, get right into it. So let's get right into it. I have 20 questions for you.
Sounds good.
And it has to do with why you started the podcast. I want to know why you started this podcast, first of all.
Well, I kind of said it in my intro. I wanted to talk to other authors about writing, and it's just a way for us to share what we do with the readers, because writing is pretty solitary. I could sit in front of my computer all day, and the only feedback we really get are from beta readers who read the early release of the book, or from reviews, which can be really brutal. So I just wanted to kind of have another platform for authors to talk about their work, how they got into writing, what their writing's about, just those kind of general things, and get a little in-depth about more than just what we read in the book.
I think that's pretty good from a reader's perspective to see what the author is thinking. That's pretty interesting. So why thrillers? What is it about that genre that made you say, yeah, that's what I'm writing. This is what I'm going to do?
Because that's what I've always read. And that's the kind of movies I like to watch. And if I ever sat down to write a short story, when I was younger, it would inevitably be something thrillerish.
All right. Where did your idea come from, your first book? Like, what was the thought process? And how much of it is pulled from real life? Now, I am not in that author's world. I am the furthest thing from it. So the questions that I ask might sound kind of very simple, but I don't know. Your world is a whole, it's another planet to me. So I'd be very curious to know these things. Like, what was it?
Well, Darkwater started as a kind of a series of short stories. And there's a lot of things that happened to me in real life in those books. And honestly, the thought process behind Darkwater was I just want to write something that I'm going to enjoy writing. So it's about scuba diving and sailing, boating in general. And then it has the thriller elements of dealing with Mexican cartel. And in that book, the cartel is trying to take back the Southwest U.S., and which is a big hot topic right now. And it kind of transcends, it's kind of a long-running theme in the U.S., so I thought, why not write it into a book?
How much of it came from real life? Just the diving and the doing all the stuff that you do? You have knowledge of that, so you thought you'd incorporate that? Is that a one of your thought processes?
Absolutely, because well, there's a story in the book about the main character's name is Ryan Weller, and Ryan is diving, and he tells Emily a story about he's learning how to side mount dive, which is carrying a tank on each side of your body. And so he's telling her a story about one of the first times he went down, and when you side mount, you switch regulators so you can breathe from each tank. You breathe each tank down 500 pounds, swap regulators. So he swapped regulators, and when he breathed in, there was no air because he forgot to turn the tank on. And I did that. So
Okay.
when you're down like 20, 30 feet, you go, oh, there's no air. So it's, kind of a good story to tell.
There you go. Why not incorporate it into your book, right?
It's in there, so.
All right. You're a Navy vet and a paraplegic, in case the listeners might not know. How did those experiences shape and build the characters like under pressure? How did you incorporate that, I should say, into your characters and the books?
So some of the characters are, one of the auxiliary characters, Greg, is in a wheelchair. Another one, Mango, he's missing a leg. Ryan is EOD. I always thought EOD was pretty cool. And when I was in the boot camp, we saw a flyer on the ship's bulletin board, and I was pretty fascinated by it. But I didn't have the hearing. I barely got in the Navy. I had to have a waiver to get in because I have tinnitus. And then so the hearing, I wouldn't pass the hearing test, so it was kind of out. But they put me right in my in the file. It says not to be in a noise hazardous rating, and they put me on a flight deck, which is probably one of the loudest places on earth. So I just took what I knew about my experience in the Navy, what I talked to other people about. Like I went out and talked to a lot of EOD guys just to get some of their experiences, and so I try to put the stuff in the book, but I mean it doesn't always come across because some of that's just some of it's really boring, some of it's really exciting, and then you go back to the boring stuff. And you were in the military, you know exactly what I mean. It's like that hurry up and wait. So with a thriller, you got to really keep the pressure on. You got to really, the old adage is you take the character and you put him in a bad situation, and then you try to figure out how to make it worse. And real life is sometimes like that, but mostly it's just, I had one guy comment that he spent 20 some years in the special forces and he never saw as much action as Ryan does in the books. So
it's a book, right?
That is a book. I mean, it's fiction, so
it's fiction. So that gives you a little artistic freedom. But so there's that, right? You being in the military, are you conscious of, well, I can't take too much artistic freedom because I really know and I will get shredded for this, in the back of your mind as a writer, you're putting it out to the people, you bare your soul pretty much. And at that point, like, do you say, have you ever gone to the point of like, no, I can't do that. I can't write that. Or do you let that affect you at all?
I kind of look at it like I want to keep the book as real as possible.
Okay.
So if, especially with the military stuff, because when veterans read a book, they can just shred another vet if they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you can always take some sort of creative license, but you have to keep it within that strict realm of military hierarchy and
right.
what really happens in the So outside in the civilian world where Ryan kind of lives, I can do pretty much whatever I want, but you kind of, I like to keep things fairly real. The combat scenes, that kind of stuff I try to keep it as real as possible, because once you go, I think there's a fine line between keeping it real and bordering on sci-fi.
Yeah.
So
So at what point? So you write your first book, and did it sit on the shelf, and you write a second one and a third one? At what point did you start publishing?
so I wrote my first book in 2016, right as the election was coming on for Hillary and Trump, and it is about militias taking over the government. And I just basically wrote it for me, and I didn't really think that anybody would really want to read it. And so I just kind of put it on the shelf, said, "Yeah, that's my learning experience, and let's move on to something else." And I wrote Dark Water, and I just I had enough fun doing it. I enjoyed doing it, and it kept me occupied. So I was like, "Let's just keep on writing." And then 20 some books later, we're here.
Again, when did you start publishing? Like, did you say after the third book, and what was that process? Now, what was okay, I want to publish Dark Water. We'll just leave it. We'll start with that. I want to publish. What was the process? What was the oh shit, did I get into something a little deep or?
Well, I did a lot of reading. I still do a lot of reading. And a lot of it was in Kindle Direct, which is their subscription service. And I saw a lot of authors were doing kind of writing in the same genre, in the same vein, and I thought I can do that too, right? So I went the self-publishing route because I didn't want to spend years waiting trying to get an agent, sending out letters and getting rejections and all this stuff. I was like, we don't need those gatekeepers anymore. Those gatekeepers are for the big five publishing world. Self-publishing has really come on in the last 10 years and even before that. And so in 2017, after I got done writing the book, I was just like, all right, let's get it edited, proofread, get it out and get a cover made and just put it out and see what happens. And the big thing in self-publishing world is you got to write a series because it keeps people engaged. They read through the series pretty quickly, and so I just kept writing, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna write a 3-book series, and then I'll move on to something else, and that turned into 15 books in the series, and they're all named Dark something, and that came about because I wrote Dark Water, and that's the name of the boat in the book, right? So the next one is called Dark Ship, and then Dark Horse, and I was like, well, let's just keep the theme going, and
all right,
that's
makes
how
sense.
It ended up.
Makes sense. Like we talked about with podcasting, you don't do just one episode.
Yeah,
right. You want to set it up and engage the audience.
Exactly.
So I used to date this girl back in the day. I was in high school, and her father was a corporate lawyer, and he was also writing a book. And now this just kind of dawned on me. I just remembered this. And he had his office. They had a very nice house, corporate lawyer house. So it was a very nice house. I always had that luck, right? I always get the girls with money. Anyway, and one day she took me in that office. It wasn't a big office. And she says, this is where he's writing his book. And he had this board. I'll never forget. And there were notes, just notes. And the way it was set up was like a puzzle almost, right? That only he could figure out. And I didn't know anything about that until later on when, I don't know, like years later, I stumbled into something about writing books, not that I was interested. And it was how some authors do their plotting. They plot characters. They plot storylines. They plot results, right? Or whatever it's going to be. Side characters, sub characters, whatever you want to call them. Do you plot, or do you just kind of sit down and just let it go, like, and just see where it takes you. And I have a follow up to that, by the way.
Okay, so I am a pantser, which means that I write by the seat of my pants.
Okay.
But I'm kind of a hybrid in the fact that I will take notes and have bulletin points, and I'll try to figure out the end of the story first, because if I know the end, all the rest will fall into place. So if I have those notes, and I don't always follow the notes strictly, I mean, this is the thing, weird thing about pantsers is that the characters will talk to us and say, "This is what I want to do. I'm not listening to you." So it's kind of like you have multiple characters in your head, multiple voices telling you what to do. For example, I kept trying to get Ryan Waller to come into the Fort Lauderdale area and kind of settle down a little bit. And he's not. He said, "No, I'm just happy on my sailboat. So I might stop by, but I'm not going to stick around." So, and that's, I mean, he comes in and out. So that's.
So my follow up to that is: have you ever had a storyline where you liked it, and you're trying to force it because you like it, but it's not coming across right, and you try to again force it, and you keep getting deeper in. Now I could be way off, I don't know.
No,
and then you're like, you know what? This just ain't gonna fucking work. Damn.
You're absolutely right. There's days when I'll write, and then I'll look back at it and go, "This sucks," and I'll erase 10,000 words and start over again.
That's got to be like, oh.
I mean,
Lord.
It's kind of heart wrenching. I'll put it over here on the side and go, "Well, maybe I can use some of that." But the book that's coming out on July 7th, Shadow Phoenix, I wrote the opening of that book 3 times.
Uh-huh.
And I used part of it, but I hardly used any of it. I just got to I kept writing it and going, "I got to make this work. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's got to work." And then it just got to the point where it's like, "Oh, this is just it's too far out there even for me, so I can't. I got to scrap it and start over again."
Okay. How do you keep action scenes grounded in reality, knowing, and this kind of touches on a question I asked earlier, that there's people that live that life, and not just the military life either. So these books aren't specific to our people, as I say, veterans, right? It goes out to everybody.
Yeah.
So there's people that don't know, and they're like, "Okay, this is what it is, and it sounds good to me." But there is these other people, because you don't know who's reading your book. Are you conscious of them? And I think I asked this, but when you're writing the action scenes, how do you try to keep it as grounded as you can? Because it's fiction, so you want to blow up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like things and people.
Yeah, I'll start with diving because I know diving. So, and there's strict rules to diving, and you have to adhere to them. And there's best practices. And so I work in a dive shop part-time, so I hear over and over again the instructors teaching open water and the basic best practices. And I'll read other books and see, I'm like, "What? That's not how you're supposed to do it." And I think I just try to say, okay, what is the best practice here? Like sailing. Sailors are they'll fillet you if you get something wrong. You call a jib a halyard and a halyard a mainsail, but so, and that sailing, I just kind of, Ryan does a lot of sailing in the book, so I just try to generalize it. I don't get too specific other than say he sailed from here to there.
Okay.
Action scenes where we're shooting bullets, and I just try to think about what I would do in that situation, or, I don't know. You just write it and go,
I got you.
Okay, is it? And now you can just stick it into Chat GPT and go, "Hey, is this real? Do I need to fix this?" And the AI will go. They'll always give you some sort of critique, and
That's a rabbit hole we could go down, but this podcast would be 2 hours long if we talked about that. The relationship now, and I have other questions, but the relationship now, and I'm sure any authors that are listening, they have an opinion
yeah,
on again the relationship between writers, and now AI. I'm sure there is no middle ground there. I think people either like it's a tool or it's cheating. I think if there is a small percentage of people that are in the middle that say, well, I see this point and I see that point. So I don't, well, give me your,
I use it as a tool because I
it's a
write
collaborator
because
almost, right?
okay, so when I was writing Shadow Phoenix, I tried to force ChatGPT is the one I know and the one I use. So I'll tell you about that one. So I would put a chapter in, and ChatGPT would go, "Oh, let's spruce this up for you," and it would immediately strip out all the exposition and make the whole thing dialogue driven. So you lose a lot. I can't make it copy my voice. They say, "Oh, you can make it copy anybody's style," but it won't copy mine.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'll end up. That's a rabbit hole. You go down there and go. You try to force it to write something, and it just doesn't do it. And you go after a half an hour. You go, screw it. I'll just write the scene myself, and then. So the whole book. So to answer your question, the whole book, every book I write is not AI written.
Right.
I use it to edit.
I was going to
I
say,
use
it's
it
a good
to
editing
critique.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah, I use it to critique. I use it to edit. I use it to fix grammar.
Okay.
And there's a lot of tools out there that, Grammarly is a huge one that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much AI driven. So if you're using Grammarly to fix anything on, you're using AI. So
Okay. So you mentioned this character a couple times already. So you have 3 characters. You have Ryan Weller, John Phoenix, and the Stuntman. Now, how are they different? And what part of you shows up in each one?
So
Isn't
Ryan
it called
Weller.
like a self-insert? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Is that called a self-insert when a writer kind of puts a piece of their personality? I know it could be common. I don't know.
There's a piece of me in every character.
Right. Okay.
So Ryan Weller is former Navy EOD, and he lives on a sailboat and sails around the Caribbean. John Phoenix comes from Special Forces, and he was a CIA clandestine officer. He gets burned by the CIA and goes into private practice. And the Stuntman came about because I wanted to write something completely different than military and CIA, and I wanted a character that could still do a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh, let's be a stuntman because they're kind of a jack of all trades. And I wanted to be one when I was a kid. So and there's a piece of me in every character because, I mean, I honestly, the one that's probably closest to me is Stuntman because I wrote the other 2 series are in third person. So Ryan or John did this, but Stuntman is in first person. So it's always I did this, I did that. And and Stuntman is completely from his perspective. There's no, there's no hop to somebody else, to the bad guy's character, so you know what the bad guy's doing. It's all from Luke Wesson's perspective, so that the reader takes the ride with Luke. So the reader might figure it out, but Luke's still trying to muddle through it. So I think that he's probably the closest to me because I love to ride motorcycles before I got hurt. That's how I got hurt. And I just wanted to write motorcycles and stunts and, just fun stuff for me.
All right. How do you keep these characters from going stale, these long running characters?
I I kind of ended Weller at 15 because he was becoming kind of stale to me. I throughout the series he was trying to work out a relationship with a woman, and it was on and off again, and then finally in the last couple of books they got married, and then in the last book they're sailing. They're going on a round the world tour on their sailboat, and he finds a pregnancy test in the bathroom, and that's just where I left it. I'm like, he's sailing away, he's happy, he's got a kid on the way, something he always wanted. So to me, I mean, I could bring him. If people ask me if I'm gonna bring him back, and I'm probably not, because I just left him in a happy place. He's done with that life and he's moved on.
Did you ever think of leaving him in a not happy place? Now I know you get attached to these characters, and I heard you kind of touch on something earlier, like sometimes it seems these characters call their own shots. Like, I'm not going for a lot of it, right? So they have a persona of their own, and you're attached to them. But have you ever thought, like, well, you know what? Biggest plot twist I could bring is, the boat blows up. And that's the end. Like, you leave the reader hanging. Is that, do you ever think of that?
Honestly, I did, and I had reader feedback. They were all like, please don't kill Emily off," because the standard trope is for your main character to finally get with the woman he loves, and then she dies. And it's like, Brad Thor and James Bond, and I mean, it's so, and I wanted to avoid that with Ryan.
Yeah.
Phoenix has so many women problems that it's hard to keep him straight. So I mean, I like writing him because he's different than Weller. Weller's got more of a conscience, like a moral, should I really shoot this guy? And Phoenix is like, I really don't like you. Bam. And he has whatever the objective is, he's going to get through it. Whether, bad guy dies or
he went from
he breaks a heart along the way. It's to me, you guys, a lot of the action is always there. I can write an action thriller all day long, but to actually get the character broke down into some sort of emotional understanding of himself or figuring it out, I think is draws the reader in, because the reader wants to see characters with emotions. They don't want to see a cardboard cutout James Bond kind of figure. They want to see a guy that bleeds on the page. That's got, he's worried about the mortgage and his wife and kids and his whatever else we're going to worry about every day. Mm-hmm. And I think people relate to that more than they can relate to, just some guy that goes around blowing people up or shooting people. It's so. I mean, every sniper movie you watch, they have some sort of emotional way for you to attach to the character.
That's the art of storytelling, my friend.
Exactly.
Connection.
Yep.
Right. Has there ever been a scene in your book or a chapter or segment or storyline that was hard for you to write? Emotionally, it's
so I like to dig into this a little bit because writing's kind of cathartic for me. So I gave Ryan some PTSD, and so throughout the books he learns to deal with that. I think we all kind of suffer some sort of emotional PTSD, whether that's from a car accident or from military service or whatever. But so there's always learning how to forgive yourself, learning how to interact with other people. One of the characters in the Ryan Weller series is Greg Olson, who owns the company that Ryan works for, and he's in a wheelchair. So I get to put Greg through all kinds of torture. Just I make him go through some of the same stuff that I went through.
There you go.
And while he kind of deals with it alcohol, I never really got into that.
But what's the
but-
emotional part of it? So I got that. But how was that emotionally for you? Did you have to relive some experiences to write this down? Did you ever look back and say, like, what the fuck? But you got to put it out there to help him, or no, maybe not.
Well, you relive some of it, but most
How
of the
did
stuff
he end up in a wheelchair?
So he and Ryan were in the same EOD unit in Afghanistan, and he was hit by an IED.
Okay.
And the shrapnel severed his spinal cord. And I wrote a prequel to the story, and it talks all about that. And I'm sure that somebody will go, oh, that looks just like a familiar EOD movie that we watched not too long ago. So I kind of stayed away from I stayed away from Afghanistan and the EOD thing, just because I don't always know how to make a bomb or how to depict it. But I put those guys there because I wanted to show the backstory. And Ryan ends up, they get separated because they both are injured. They send Greg to Texas, and Ryan ends up going to visit him and spending some time with him. And in the book, Greg refuses to eat, and that's kind of how I dealt with becoming a paraplegic too. So just putting them in, you're always thinking about, what's the toughest situation I can be in? How am I going to wheel and shoot a gun? Or how am I going to carry something on my lap and make it down these stairs, or drive a boat from a wheelchair? So there's always something
the things that people don't think about.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep.
I know we touched on this earlier, but that feedback, the criticism from people who think they know better, or they know and you don't. And it's just like anything. People can suck. How do you deal with that?
You read it and go, okay, everybody has an opinion.
Have you ever looked at something that said, well, maybe he's right or she's right?
Absolutely.
There you go. Okay, so you don't fight it.
I mean, I had one lady was upset because, Ryan's a smoker, and he, and I talk about this through most of the books. It's an addiction that he fights. And she was upset that, she's like, every chapter he's lighting a cigarette. And I'm like, okay, so I'll dial some of it back. So
you let her affect your character. Interesting.
I think it's because readers don't, the whole society as a whole is like frowning upon smoking when in the military it's like one of those things that people start doing just so they can take a break.
Smoking.
It's like, I'm going to the smoke pit for 15 minutes, and you disappear every hour for 15 minutes, and you only have to work 45 minutes out of the hour.
Yeah.
So, but and that's how the military life goes. You start smoking, and you're up long hours. You need a nicotine fix, but that's reviews are kind of cool, and the fact that you get the feedback and people saying, oh, I love the books, I love the characters, I can't wait to read more. And then you get the 1-star reviews that say, this absolutely sucks, there's better stuff out there. And you just say, okay, cool. And you keep writing and just try to keep improving your craft. And I think everybody, no matter what they say, they're always like, oh, ignore the reviews. But you can't ignore them. It's human nature to absorb that criticism, but you have to figure out what you need to change.
How to not take it personally.
Yeah. Which is
hard, because you put your heart and soul into this thing.
Yeah, you can't take it personally because it's one person's opinion of your book or your podcast or whatever you're doing.
Like if someone said, oh, your son is stupid. Like, whoa. That's my baby. That's my boy, right?
Well, those are fighting words, so that's
yeah, but that's so that's my book. That I just put, I don't know, a year of my life into this thing. Was that so? Over the time, I assumed that it was maybe like that at first. Correct me if I'm wrong, but over time, you're like, I get it now.
Yeah, I think when it first started, I took it more to heart, and I'd be like, I got a 1-star
You wrote the greatest
review.
book in the world. right?
Yeah, absolutely. I
You
read
should think
15 of
that
them.
way.
I mean,
Yeah, you
yeah.
should think that way. I'm not just like you should think
Uh,
this is a damn good book, right?
I, I, Hollywood should be knocking down my door
There
to
you
make
go.
movies.
That's the
I
next
mean,
step. But remember me when that happens. So while we're on this subject of the putting your books out, what is it about? Tell me something about self-publishing that people get wrong. Is there a stigma to it?
oh boy. So here lately, I've been seeing ads on YouTube and Facebook, or they're like, start a side hustle, publish books on Amazon. It it's not a side hustle. For some people, it is. I mean, you could write a book and put it up there and not never ever worry about it. But if you
Yeah.
want to make a go of it, writing is just it's the tip of the iceberg. Everything else beneath the surface is, it's advertising, it's emailing, it's I don't know, just there's just so many things that you have to do to make the book. Just if you just start with writing the story, I can write a phenomenal story, but then you got to edit it, and that takes hours. And that's one of the most frustrating things for me is, people can write a one-star criticism, and I can read it and move on. But when I got to read the editor's notes, and I'm like, you just didn't get the story. You didn't. Oh, yeah. Oh. So my wife is always like, "Oh, Evan's editing again. Let's stay away from me."
Are writers, authors, somewhere in their psyche a little masochistic?
I think so. I think you have to be because you're sitting in a room alone typing away, and
You're putting yourself out there to just get somebody.
yeah, you're gonna
You
get
still
hammered.
do it.
The first,
That's the thing. You don't quit. You just keep going. Right?
yeah, the first person to hammer you is your editor, and then there's your beta readers, and then it's the people who read your books and give you that 1-star review. But you flog yourself with your cat o' nine tails, and you move on, and you go, okay, I'll just write a better one.
Do a little Opus Day.
Exactly.
Do you know of authors, since you've been doing this for a while, that were one and done? Like, no, that was like, I'm not taking that crap I'm not doing this anymore.
I don't know about one and done. There's some authors that write, and then they may write a trilogy or whatever, where they keep most authors, once they get the bug, like if they're writing a series, I mean it's
Criticism aside, damned,
that,
whatever.
it's all you think about.
Okay.
I'm driving down the road in your car. Oh wow, there's an idea for a story. Let's write that down. You're walking at the beach going, oh, look at that. That's an idea for a story. And then you're constantly thinking about how to improve the character, or how to improve the storyline, or what the next book is going to be about. But I do know people who can't get out of the starting gate, if you know what I mean. It's and they're pantsers, and inevitably pantsers fall into this trap of, I got a bright idea for a story, and the first 10 to 15,000 words just fall right out, and it's like the easiest thing in the world. And then you go, okay, where does the story go from here? And that's where a lot of pantsers get lost. And what they do is fall back and they start rewriting the same chapters or rewriting the same thing, or they move on to another story. So they got like 15 unfinished manuscripts laying around. And
Yeah.
I think you can be a pantser. I'm a pantser. Most of the authors I know are pantsers, but the key is just finding the motivation to push through and get it done.
It's like podcasting.
Exactly.
The average podcast, and we talked about this in the class, the average podcast lasts 6 episodes. That's the 15,000 words, right? Then they're like, oh, this is a little bit of work. This is like, I have to do this, and this. And all right, well, maybe I'm not in the mood this week. And then it moves on. There are tens of thousands of dead podcasts that don't go beyond 6 or less episodes. And, the percentage is 10 episodes, 20 episodes. They start dropping off. You find all those. But the average is 6 episodes. it's not what they thought it was. It's always a glamorous idea to want to do this, writing in your case.
Yeah.
But when you got to put in the work, and that's what I told you when you first said you got to put in the work for this. If you want it, it can be a lot of fun, just like writing. It can be a lot of fun, a lot of frustrations. You hit a lot of walls.
The conversation we're having right now is just like writing the book. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
It's everything else. It's the editing and the marketing and all the other stuff that goes into it.
How do you stay motivated after 20 plus books? Like, is it just become routine, or are you still like excited? Is it that first love type thing, or does that kind of wear off and you settle into your relationship just like a regular relationship and you're happy with your relationship? Is it kind of work that way?
I think there's some burnout. Like right now I'm kind of burnt out with it, but and that's probably why I started podcasting.
No,
I needed something else to do.
And that's a great,
and they keep me excited about
great route to take, because you're still creating, you're still using your brand, and you're going to be talking to other authors.
So I tell you, I got burnt. I think at the end of every book, you always feel a little burnt out, but then you start writing the next one. That once that idea hits, then it's like wildfire, and you gotta get it onto the page, and I gotta start this book, and then everything else goes to the wayside for the next month and a half while I finish this book, or 3 months, or however it's going to take me. But I mean, so right now, kind of, I got a book coming out. I got one that came back from the editor like a month ago, and I haven't done anything with it, but I wanted to get the podcast rolling. I work on my website, work on my emails. So it's all the stuff that the underneath the water stuff that nobody sees, that it's like, okay, I just need to take the time to do this. And so I'm not burnt out from writing a book, because once I get started, like I said, everything else is like, I don't really feel like doing that stuff today, so let's just keep writing.
So when you are writing, what's your daily process? Daily routine?
Oh boy. So, I mean, it's usually get up at 5 o'clock, I think, and it's just to start, put on a pot of coffee and look at the emails, and then pull up the story and pull up the Word document and just start writing. And I try to write 2,000 words a day.
7 days a week?
Usually 5, because 2 days out of the week I'm working at the dive shop.
That's right.
But when I don't work there, usually I'm trying to put in some more words. And sometimes I'll come home on, like, we only work half days on Sunday, so I'll come home on Sunday, and if I'm really feeling ambitious, I'll sit down and write. I don't really have a routine where I like write in the morning and then the afternoon is set aside for other stuff. Like I said, if I'm focused on writing the book, that's all I'm going to do during the day. And sometimes the 2,000 words, I can get that in really quickly, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth.
What book hit the hardest? What book hit you the hardest? Both, I guess, writing it and emotionally, and kind of was like, oof. That was
oh boy.
There.
There were some middle books, like, so Dark Fraud is like book 9 or 10 in that Ryan Weller series. And so Ryan learned some things about the past that he assumed weren't what he assumed, that the ghost he was chasing is not who he was chasing. And then Greg is dealing with some emotional issues, and so they're back and forth with, Ryan feels this need to protect Greg because Greg's in a wheelchair, and Greg absolutely hates that, and he wants to go off and do his own thing and be a partner, not so much somebody to be protected. So there's always, in every book, there's a part that's like, especially when I'm writing about that dynamic, it's tough to it's tough to write, and it's tough to. Greg's character is tough to write because it's basically me living through Greg, trying to put myself in his position, and just,
All right.
I mean, that's the hardest part is putting yourself out there and putting yourself on the page, and for me it's almost like part of it's a memoir because there's stuff in there that happened to me, and there's and I tell people about it, whether they believe it happened or not. It's up to them.
Villains. How do you keep the villains fresh? Like without repeating, is there one particular villain that Ryan Weller is after, or do you kind of jump around? And what's the thought process before introducing them and then building them and keeping them going?
In all the Weller books, each of them have their own antagonist, their own bad guy that he's dealing with. And Phoenix, the first 5 books deal with him trying to come to terms and trying to bring down a CIA mole. And there's individual bad guys throughout every book that he has to deal with, but there's always an overarching bad guy in Phoenix. Stuntman the first book in Stuntman is his wife gets killed, and so he doesn't think the police think that he's did it, so he kind of sets out on a vendetta ride to find the real killer. But when I look at the bad guys, I mean, there's a whole plethora of real life bad guys out there that you can pick from. Lots of books about them and TV shows, and it's just go out and pick and choose what you want and stick the traits in there.
Like a Frankenstein villain.
Yeah.
Right. How do you decide whether a character lives or dies?
Part of it is will this push the main character forward? Will it propel them into a different situation? Emotional state, and then auxiliary bad guys die, like Peanuts.
Yeah, like the red shirts in Star Trek.
Exactly.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
If there's a dude that got a red shirt on in that episode, he's probably gonna die.
Yep. So, but mostly
always.
Yeah. I mean, the bad guys just always die. So.
You don't have one long running bad guy like Sherlock Holmes had Moriarty and.
Well, in Phoenix, he had a guy codenamed Dragonfly that he was chasing, who was kind of ran a criminal enterprise a la Blacklist. So if you've ever seen the TV show Blacklist, where James Spader is runs this criminal enterprise, and he works for the FBI.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I molded Dragonfly. So he spends 5 books going after that, and then.
Okay.
So,
you get all sorts of people in there. You get spies, you get combat divers, you get stuntmen. Do you seek any of these people out and interview them, or do you watch videos on them? How do you get a background to build on these characters to have some sort of realism to them? It's kind of touched on a question I asked earlier, but
you go out and talk to them.
You seek them out.
Yeah, especially like EOD guys. When I wanted to know about EOD, I mean, they'll be happy to sit down and tell you all kinds of stories. That what they won't tell you is the stuff they actually did. They won't tell you about, which wire to cut on a bouncing Betty or whatever. So, but and they won't tell you about the really bad stuff that they saw. But they'll tell you like how to make a cell phone.
Really, what you're looking for is the technical aspect of it. You can create all that other stuff.
Yeah, you're looking for the technical aspect. And the stuntman. I mean, there's just so much stuff out there on YouTube and other places that have the background, how to make a stunt, or how to how this process happens.
Do you
And
ever
there's
think like how writers back in the day who didn't have the internet and didn't have any of this were such brilliant writers, and you look at them today and you're like, that dude was, well, that lady was spot on.
yeah,
Like the work that must have went into that to get that. Like my old girlfriend's dad, this was 81. There was no internet. There was no
yeah. I
nothing.
mean,
He like really researched and put together each character. And
yeah. There's and Stuntman. He was in one of the Stuntman books. He's the they talking about they're on set and they need a firearms expert, and there's some stuff on the internet about it, but I ended up calling California and talking to
there you go.
a guy who owns a prop firearm business, and I mean, he just gave me the lowdown. He wasn't shy. It was really cool. I'm like, hey, I'm writing this book,
He's got nothing to hide.
and
Right?
I mean, he just broke it down. It was really cool,
Yeah.
and it happened about the same time that that the incident on Rust happened, where
Yep.
so we're and.
Yeah.
So he had a lot to say about that, which
Yeah.
I'll save that for later.
Yeah, that's another conversation. If someone's never read your books, where now the obvious answer is from the beginning,
Yeah.
but where do you say they pick up? Right at the beginning, the first book, first series, or
I I'll tell you, if you pick up Dark Water and read it, that's the very first book that I published, and it's going to read differently than the 15th book in the series because I changed as a writer through this evolution. But start there, and John Phoenix comes in book 15 in the Weller series, and they don't get along at all, and and then Phoenix picks up with some character carryover from the Weller series. And then Stuntman's just out in California all on his own. So,
all right,
I mean, it's grab a series and dig in. You don't have to. I mean, I kind of wrote each book individually, so if you don't start at the beginning, you're not missing anything. Just pick up a book and start reading. That's the key.
okay. Like podcasting, I have one podcast called Milk Crates and Turntables, and I just finished episode 180, and I do a live stream every Thursday night, and then it turns into a podcast, and I don't recommend listening to episode 1 because the difference between episode 1 and episode 180 is amazingly like it's like, oh yeah, that's like that high school picture.
Yeah.
But don't look at that.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, it's a good episode. They're all informative, but it's just they're very different. They're not polished. They don't have a flow. Like they have somewhat of a flow. So I suppose, like you just said with your books, and you're getting into podcasting now, so you will do a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
And you will look back at this episode and whatever the first real interview is, and you're going to go, oh, wow, you see the improvement.
I hope so.
You hear the improvement, right?
Yeah.
And that's like you just said with writing. Like the
Yeah.
first book is different than the 20th book.
I think
It just got better, right?
Yeah, I think like Dark Water, and I'll be honest with you. There's this lady reviewed my book, and she said there's a chapter in there in which nothing happens, and I'm like, well, I mean, she's kind of right. I was trying to world build, and nothing really happens till the very last sentence of the chapter.
But she kept reading it.
But she read the whole thing.
That's
so,
That's it.
And so I think I didn't really hit my stride in that series until Dark Drone. I can't remember the number of it, but Dark Drone was like, I finally felt like I hit what a thriller should be like, how it's written, how it's, the plot. I mean, that's where I thought I came into my own, but so.
All right. Well, what's the one thing you want people to feel after they read one of your books?
I got to read the next one to find out what happens.
Okay.
No, I just want them to relate to the characters. I want them to think about. I want the book to stick with them, and for them to think. I wonder what Ryan's up to. Is he happy on his sailboat with his wife and kid, or is he looking for a mission?
That's a connection
So
to the character.
yeah. So, but I just I think people need that connection, and that's the connection I want to bring, and I just hope they it connects with them enough that they pick up the next book.
There you go. Well, that's my 20 questions, my friend. I think there was actually like 23.
Hey,
This is your first real episode of your podcast, and
yes,
again,
it is.
thank you. I was very honored that you asked me to help you do your first episode and find out about what you're doing. And now, from this point on, the show is yours. And is it this format, right? You're going to sit down with an author and pick their brain, like I just picked your brain about their processes, and all right,
Absolutely.
good.
So,
I did say I have to be brutally honest here. We did have a conversation, you and I, recently, where I said authors, I think, are different kinds of people. They're just a different kind of people.
we
In
are
a good way. I don't want you getting inundated with, what is that supposed to mean?
Well, I
In a
tell
good way. Your brain works differently.
I tell
think
everybody that I'm like, if we have a conversation, something you say may or may not end up in a book. So
There you go. Well, I'd like to be in that one of those books. That would be pretty cool. I don't see how people could not want that. Well, Evan, I'm going to hand it over to you now. This is your first episode, your show. I'm going to hand it back to you, and it's all yours.
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you for Scott for hammering with me with some questions and helping me out with this whole journey. And he's teaching me a lot of stuff, and I hope he keeps teaching me more so I can help bring more podcasts to the world. So the next guest is going to be Nick Sullivan. He's an author, actor, and audiobook producer, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you.